So, Andy, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your journey to become a supervisor. One of the questions I always start with is to find out a bit about who you are as a coach, as a human being, before we talk about you as a supervisor. So perhaps you can give us a bit of background, who you are and what your coaching's been so far.
Goodness me. Okay, so let me think about that, how I compose the answer. So my early career was in the license trade. Almost a cliche, but in terms of when you're standing behind the bar, often you enter into conversations with regulars more than sort of one-off customers, as it were, but regular customers that might sometimes be described as coaching conversations. Albeit that they are not formally addressed in that way or not formally positioned in that way, but I enjoyed that element of that role in terms of when I was in the license trade. However, moved from the license trade because I realised it was less of a career and more of a way of life, and it wasn't necessarily a way of life that I wanted to sustain because very long hours, not necessarily the most healthy of pastimes and occupations. So I moved from that and slowly but surely worked to build an understanding that I wanted to. Well, first of all, I thought I wanted to help people train to run pubs and restaurants and that sort of thing, but realized slowly but surely that my passion really was simply development, full stop, and not necessarily with a focus on any particular industry or occupation, but helping people, again, almost a cliche, but helping people reach their potential. And in that sort of endeavor, I slowly but surely built a toolkit to support people in development. And one of those tools was very clearly coaching, which I felt I had natural skills at, if that's not too strong a word, because of the way that I've been working in the license trade, but wanted to formalize those and wanted to develop those and wanted to put those into more formal practice. And that's sort of led me on a journey of doing a lot more coaching throughout my career. And in terms of working in learning and organisational development, my career has been, I think we're coming up to about the 30th year in that sort of that line rather than the license trade. And in terms of where that's taken me, so I'm now working for the RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, the largest nature conservation charity in Europe, and we have just over 2,500 employees, and we have around about 14,000 volunteers as well, who, in varying degrees and in varying quantities, look for coaching support. And that led us most recently to set up a sort of a coaching body, a coaching resource that people could apply to, could look to get an understanding of what coaching is and what coaching might provide for them and what benefits they might get from coaching, and have a sort of a chemistry session with a number of coaches to identify a coach that could support them in their career at the RSPB or volunteering in the RSPB. And in that, sorry, this is a very long-winded answer. I hope this is okay. But in that, I recognise that obviously, in most codes of conduct for coaching suggests that coaches should have, certainly encouraged to have coaching supervision. So that led me on to undertaking the coaching supervision qualification to provide that supervision for our internal coaches and some of our external coaches as well. There you go. That was a long-winded answer, but hopefully that sort of describes the journey that I've been on in terms of why coaching and then why coaching supervision.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So in a way, from how I picked that story up, there's a little gap for me, which was from the license trade. You realized you wanted to help people, but then you end up in L&D. What was that little journey like?
So from the license trade, I dabbled in various different things, trying to find my passion. And I realized that the license trade wasn't something I wanted to sustain, but did enjoy developing people in the license trade, and initially applied for jobs and On the whole, I don't. There was one that I was offered, but a couple that I didn't get that I regretted that were training people to run pubs and restaurants. And then a number of personal circumstances changed. I ran away to France in the French Alps. I ran a bar in the French Alps, and from there enjoyed, the sort of the more informal coaching approach to running that and developing people. And then came back from France and was looking for a job, but ended up working in training for an outdoor activity and water sports centre for Cambridgeshire County Council, and was offered an opportunity to work with young people to develop a programme of leadership development for young people, 18 to 26-year-olds. And absolutely loved the experience. It was providing sort of personal development, coaching support, mentoring to a certain extent, but really, really enjoyed the coaching side of things there. And that made me realise that I really wanted to put my efforts much more in along that sort of L&D coaching support approach.
Right.
And went on to develop that program of support for leaders, and again, made an insistence that coaching should provide should be a consistent theme in that support for that.
Nice. And when you look back at your coaching career, before we get to the supervision part, how would you describe yourself as a coach? Did you have a particular school of practice, like a Gestalt coach or an existential coach, or did you? I mean, how was that for you? What kind of coach were you?
I've always struggled to answer that question because I've always the reason why I struggle to answer that question is because I've always adapted my style for what the coachee needs. I had a background in psychotherapy, psychoanalysis. And I've done the usual, the NLP side of things and that sort of stuff. But I also undertook qualifications in hypnotherapy and psychoanalysis as well. So I'll bring that into the mix when it's appropriate. So yeah, in terms of answering that question, the style and approach, I don't know how to answer that. It really is dependent on the coachee.
No, absolutely, Andy. You've answered. I mean, some people take that integrative, responsive approach, let's say, and others are more wedded to a particular theoretical framework. So no, absolutely, you've answered it. So at the point where you started thinking about supervision, you said there was a kind of a coaching function being built in RSPB. You were one of those coaches, presumably, or were you heading it up?
So I'm one of those coaches. We've got somebody else that does the administrative side of putting that together. So I don't necessarily head that up, but I also do head up the supervision side of that as well.
Got it, yeah. So how did that happen? Because that's an interesting, for somebody to go, it's time for me to step up and be that supervisor. What happened in your brain? Or did somebody say to you, hey, Andy, we need a supervisor? You're like, what was that? What happened?
Well, a few years ago, I did my ILM Level 7 executive coaching and supervision. Executive coaching and mentoring qualification. And in doing that qualification, you study codes of conduct and explore supervision in that, and that made me realize, well, actually, if we are providing a coaching service, we also need to ensure that our coaches are being supervised.
Yeah.
Because that's part of being a coach. Being a good coach, I think, is part of that development, part of that understanding, part of that support. And I thought, well, I am, in terms of our internal coaches, and this sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet, but I'm the most qualified and the most experienced coach in terms of the coaching service, internal coaches that we've got at the RSPB, and it made sense that I sort of then followed that up with supervision of that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me about the journey. There you were, you're a coach, and you've had many, many years of coaching and other modalities, psychoanalysis and psychotherapy and NLP. What, if anything, surprised you about the supervision process or the becoming a supervisor?
What, if anything, surprised me? I think probably the fact that I think there's always the thought that coaching supervision is simply coaching the coach. And it isn't. And I think that was a sort of a revelation to me that actually, there are various different shoes and hats that you wear as a supervisor. And although the lines are often blurred, it's useful to define some of those better with when you are being a supervisor. But it was a surprise to me for that understanding to grow with me, if you see what I mean, and realizing that that there's a time for curative and the time for other different forms of supervision. And I'm struggling for the descriptive words for them at the moment, but they'll come to me in a minute.
No, I mean, technically,
I guess the surprise was sorry, going to say.
I was just going to say, technically, in the coaching world, of course, it's the normative, formative, and restorative.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Yes, and I don't know why those didn't come to me at that time. But yeah, it's recognizing that the surprise was the difference, and when it's most appropriate to wear those different hats.
Well, one of the things we find, Andy, a lot is that everyone who becomes a supervisor is an experienced coach, so they're not in any way beginners. But sometimes they can throw them back on feeling like a beginner precisely because there's suddenly these new shoes and new hats. There's hold on, which shoes and which new hats do I need to wear here? How did you adapt to those new shoes and new hats? Were any of them particularly challenging for you? Were some more comfortable? Were some exciting to be able to plonk that hat on? Like, what was that like for you?
I guess I made no secret in terms of my motivation in things is to a certain extent having impact and being recognised for having impact as well. I like to know what I'm doing and know how I'm going to go about doing it and know that what I'm doing is having an impact. And so I guess for me it's been great to know that I guess in the RSPB, and again I'm sounding like I'm blowing my own trumpet, that my expertise is recognised. And that I can bring that experience to the benefit of our coaches by wearing those different hats, but also sometimes in those hats, being the expert is a useful approach. Albeit a learning expert. I mean, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think, my goodness me, there's so much more to learn.
Oh, for sure, it never ends, does it? But I'm curious, like, one of the things I find, Andy, is that some coaches find one hat, let's stick with the hat analogy, find one hat super comfortable, goes on the head, wow, fits beautifully. And then they get the other one that's a little bit tight or it's a little bit loose. They don't like stepping into authority, or they don't like feeling like, their knowledge matters, whereas in coaching, it doesn't so much matter. And was there something that you've experienced that made you go, whoa, this is kind of like interestingly challenging, or where did your preference and your challenge lie in that?
So I've had two main challenges, I guess, in terms of the restorative, normative, and authoritative. I guess traditionally I've always been taught that's absolutely critically important to agree a goal, agree an objective, to that's your starting point. And if you haven't got that, then coaching or supervision is wasted. I know that that's wrong. And somebody once told me the line that exploration is curative. And once and hearing that and building, growing an understanding of that was hugely powerful. And so I guess one where I'm feeling less comfortable and where my learning is still growing is on that restorative approach, where you're not striving for an outcome or an objective. You're allowing people to explore the territory, to express their concerns, their feelings, their thoughts, their anxieties, their hopes, their fears, etc. And there is so much value in that. But there's a lot of trust that goes into that.
It's so interesting because, of course, so many coaches exactly have that belief system that Well, and indeed, it's correct for coaching to some degree that it's a goal-focused activity. So when they become a supervisor, it's like they've got to drop off some element of that, or at least the consistency of it always being there.
Yeah, yeah. But it again, just sort of using that word trust. I think that there's a lot of that comes into it. That trusting that exploration is curative.
Trust the process, as they say in psychotherapy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you noticed any ripple effects for you of becoming a supervisor? How has it impacted, if at all, your coaching, your other practices, maybe even your role at RSPB? Has it had some additional effects?
Yeah, I definitely. I was actually running a group supervision session yesterday, and in group supervision, I often bring in the coach's perspective, and learning from them. That's the ripple effect for me. Is actually realizing, that they have as much to contribute to my coaching experience and supervision experience as I am hoping to give to them.
Yeah, that's very nice. Andy, looking ahead, you've talked about the journey you've been on, what was interesting, a little challenging, but it sounds like it's been a very constructive journey for you so far. How do you see the future for yourself as a supervisor? What does that look like?
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. My line manager asked me where I felt my strengths lie recently in terms of the whole role that I provide at the RSPB, and I've said coaching and coaching supervision. And she said, and she used the word, "That's where you're most comfortable." And I said, "Absolutely not. I'm not comfortable." And that's the great thing about it. Every day is a learning day. Every day is a school day, as they say. And every day I'm learning more and more. And if I ever felt comfortable in doing that, I think that would be the time to put, hang up my coat and give up, because it's, I think there is so much to learn. And if I got comfortable, I'm not giving my best. So where do I see it? We're taking more of, but learning more from other people, and learning more from myself, and learning more from doing more.
Yeah, great. Final question, Andy. For somebody who's thinking about becoming a supervisor, what would you say to them in terms of either an insight you've had along the way that they might find, that's interesting to hear, or a piece of advice, just something that maybe somebody who's thinking about this journey might find interesting and useful?
From my perspective, don't do it for the money. Do it for the love of coaching and helping people with their coaching. Other advice. Again, another cliche, but go into it with an open mind. I think however much you read and however much you explore in advance doesn't prepare you for the growing understanding, or didn't prepare me for the growing understanding of what supervision is and isn't, and also the challenges that come with that. So yeah, my advice is go with an open mind, but don't go into it for here's my career and here's where the money's going to be. It's for the love of doing it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Andy. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and thanks for sharing your journey.
Pleasure. Thank you.